Ready to start the meeting? Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Georgina Ortega-Agi.
Here.
Pro-Chick Proctor.
Present.
Colleen Strader.
Present.
Matt Martinez.
Here.
You guys have a quorum?
All right. So if there's not any questions or discussion on on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A second.
All right. And everybody in pro say aye.
Aye.
All right. Approval of minutes. Any discussion on approval of minutes? It was looks like the 2 meetings.
I move that we approve the 2 minutes. To the best of my knowledge, that seems to be what we talked about, but it's been too long and I had COVID.
In a little bit, yeah.
So that seems to be
We don't have
pretty
any,
much what it, I sort of can remember.
So I'll second. Everybody who approves, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any public input? Moving on to business items. So approval expenditure of Logistech's funds for promoting and advertising the city of Las Vegas at the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta on October 7th to 15th, 2023. Gentlemen, I'll let you guys lead the way if you got a
Sure.
presentation.
Good afternoon. We're here to talk today about the upcoming balloon fiestas and how we can go ahead and become, or hopefully enter into a contract with, to be a sponsor at the balloon fiestas. But in your packet, you guys will find your fiesta packet that's in there. What we're trying to do, we tried to get back into the same structure that we were in last year, but it was a little too late. Everything had sold out. So what we wound up getting was a chance to be a sponsor for the Fiesta de los Globitos, is what it's called. These are a bunch of miniature-sized balloons that are operated with remote control. They'll take off on different days at different times. One of the good things about it is we're scheduled to be on liftoff for a day that's supposedly going to have an eclipse. So that might help us in attracting people because they might want to be out there to see these eclipses, and we're out there sponsoring this event, this particular event. So we wanted to come forward with you guys, and we have a little bit of a schedule of fees, and I'll let Chuck go ahead and read those out if possible,
Mr.
and we'll
Chairman.
explain what they're going to be used for.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So the cost of the sponsorship is $16,000. The lodging per diem for nine nights, so for 2 employees is $7,000. And the promotional items for the booth is $5,000, for a total of $28,000.
All right.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty much the remake of last year's
Okay,
event.
for the,
What I wanted to add was that last year's event, myself and Montana were there, and we did have, just on my shift alone, we had 4 riders from New York that were walking by, and they stopped at our booth, and they were getting information from our booth because they were coming to Las Vegas. They wanted to come to Vegas. Had they not seen our booth there, we would have missed that opportunity.
Right.
So,
so I guess that, I mean, some of the questions that we had for the follow-up is how do we quantify, how do we count the impact of the booth? Are we gonna have something at the booth, or how can we know we're sending out 10,000, these things, 10,000, but is there anything that we could put this year?
So I wanted to, for this year, I wanted to have in the visitor center, we have a sign-up sheet, who you are, where you're from, that type of thing, so we can get a counting of how many people hit our booth. Last year, like you said, we only had the swag that we were giving out to quantify, and that was, I mean, that's not good enough. So this year, we wanted to actually get names, zip codes of people coming by.
So last year you had the opportunity to do the signatures and you didn't get signatures?
It
Any
wasn't up
kind
to me
of,
last year, but the director at that time didn't, I can't
So
answer for her.
last year,
There's no proof that we got anything for, what was it that we spent last year on this thing?
Well, it was over 25,000, I believe.
we
And
got,
we have nothing deliverables, like a
That's a
sign-in
that would've been a
sheet
question
or
for us.
anything like
That
that?
would have been a question for Mr. Weiser.
no, but we got the deal. So we had the viewership. So we got quite the, I mean, I'm not seeing it this year, but on that year, we got quite the visibility for our town. We were returning to the Balloon Fiestas for a long period, so I think they were doing it quickly. So
Right.
this review on what more we can do to count is what we found out, hey, we could probably do more.
Right.
So at the time, they actually did a pretty good job on how late it started. This year, I was hoping, since we learned from last time, that we got in and got that same exposure. But some of the things that we talked about after the feedback was, hey, what are some ways, because we know from last year, we knew the number of viewership, of eyeballs on it. I mean, we were put there. For here, I'm not sure. I mean, do we have any viewership numbers other than this, what we're distributing? So it's a little bit more vague this year because I don't have viewership numbers to go with. So we're even further behind the eight ball. So we better have some counting or ability of who's visiting the booth or how many people are coming with it. On the 14th, you're right. There's a solar event. There's a national. I see bookings from here. So there seems to be a side event with Balloon Fiesta, and that's the national. The solar eclipse event. Albuquerque's right in the middle of that path, so I'm assuming there's going to be some cross promotion. But we have to brainstorm on, okay, if it's going to be banners and these things, a lot of this is even harder because there's nobody counting. For when we had viewership with the TV and so on, they were giving us the numbers. So for this, it's harder. We don't have enough items. We're just saying, okay, this is what's going out, but we don't know
We will have
if,
numbers.
right. You see what I'm saying? Like for TV viewership, they would tell us, these are the eyeballs that are on there.
Right.
Right now with banners and stuff, that's the hard part. Billboards, banners, stuff like that. We don't know if people even looked at the items. Just because we distributed it doesn't mean that. So if this is the only way we could go, then we need to quantify who's actually seen it and whether it was worthwhile for this year. There is a distinct difference from what we did last year and what we did this year. Okay.
We will definitely work on the accounting of it.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, in regards to, I think we even talked about QR codes. Is that something that as people go by, they can maybe download or I don't know what our last publication of, I think the chamber has something, I don't know what we
We had that last year.
Is there a way to, not only did they get it, will they keep track of who got it?
We had that last year, Mr. Martinez, but it didn't, people didn't wanna,
They didn't want to download
people
it?
are real leery of their phone, it seems like putting anything on their phone. So we had it there and maybe a handful of people actually did it.
The whole time we were
Yeah.
there? Same thing?
People just weren't interested in it.
Yeah, what I saw was we saw people scan it, but they had to actually put in their information. They just scanned it, let it pop up, locked their phone, and went on their merry way. So they didn't actually put in to get the accountability. They didn't actually put their information into the
phone itself.
website that
Cause you have to
pulled up.
register and everything.
Is there a way to do it less complicated?
Well, there could be a carrot. So usually how people get, or hotels are also is, for hotels, you want a gift card? So, hey, sign up for our rewards program, and you'll get a gift card. For us, we need a carrot saying, hey, win something. I mean, it's pretty common for that. So for reluctant people to sign up, though, if they have something in it for them, they will sign up.
We had that last
It
year.
was for the Plaza Hotel. That was
Yeah,
it was
two-night stay.
a 2-night stay at the Plaza Hotel, and
Two-night
that's what
stay,
they
any of
weren't
those things, and it
registering.
looks like you're dropping a lot of inserts, but look, that's that's people, but just people responding whether they want or not, that's eyeballs that's making an impact that they know that Las Vegas, New Mexico exists. And then they start looking at our other marketing items to look at Las Vegas, so.
Thinking just doing an actual counter.
There's a counter, yeah, we gotta do, so what we have this year is a lot of things that we're trying to put in front of people for it, but we've gotta come up with a way of, so if we have a lot of flyers and we're dropping in these baskets, let's be creative and let's come up with something that's, maybe it's something unique to us, and so on, so that people talk about. Sometimes that prize is what a lot of people talk about as well, but we gotta make that impact. There's more pressure this year to count, to be accountable versus last year. We got away some last year because we had at least some metrics that the TV stations and so on were telling us this is the viewership
Some of
we
the
have.
other, Mr. Chairman, some of the other booths, they had a spin wheel with several different things that you would win. A part of, in order to win that certain item, you had to put your name and your zip code and your address. And they seemed to do that, so that was something that we were thinking about possibly doing, getting like Charlie's, maybe Best Western, something, just different prizes, and going that route.
I have a question. This offer expires August 11th. We're the 15th, correct? So is this null and void?
No, Mrs. Chairwoman, no, ma'am. We still have a chance to get it. We were gonna try to get a special meeting put together by Friday, but it wasn't an emergency, so we couldn't put that meeting in order and so we could make sure we didn't violate any issues.
Okay, so everything that says August 11th,
It's still,
it's still
it's still
good.
open.
It's still available.
Do you guys know if this drop is gonna be televised?
As far as we know it is.
As far as so I mean, just to be clear, we have, as far as these, they'll be dropping leaflets, or whatever we provide.
That's my understanding.
Okay, and then, as far as what we're gonna have on it, it's yet to be decided on what needs to be printed out. Okay, so there's our opportunity there to see, but we don't know whether that actual event of this, so they're just dropping them randomly in the crowd, or are they televising the event?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I just know there will be a drop.
So were we too late on the package that we got? Like, not just the booth, but as far as the marketing package, as far as television scope, were we too late, or?
That I don't have an
Yeah, I
answer for.
don't have an answer either for that one.
Okay,
I think, Mr. Chair, what the manager said last year is that it was sort of a last second thing. They still had that one thing available.
he mentioned we lucked into something and we got a
into
good
it
spot,
by-
yeah.
So I, the success of last year's event probably made this one more attractive to a lot of people, so I think we might be even lucky to get in this. So I think we need to act on it.
So that card's probably gonna be, I mean, considering that we're paying, is gonna be pretty important on what we put, whether it's a QR code or at least a link. And then have it be a carrot that they'll actually do it, and they won't throw away the card. There has to be something on there that says, you know what, I wanna go fill it out, and they should be able to do it right from their phone. So you can have the link and the QR code on there, but it takes them to a site to sign up for it, and let's come up with a prize. Our prize is
I
that
think there was
would,
just too many steps in the last one. There was too many steps for it.
yeah, we've got a little bit more time now. Hopefully, we can do that. We can execute on that for it. But that's, I mean, if we're going this route, that's going to be important because it'll be a little bit harder to do with some of the other things as far as banners and T-shirts and those go. It's harder to count. I know you just distribute it, but we don't see the impact of whether they actually cared about Las Vegas or not. But so we've got, what's important is what we're dropping, how we're counting it at the booth.
Right.
Okay, trying to get their information on the booth, just not the count.
I think if
Because
we can
we'll-
make that QR codes
Yeah,
easier and simpler, not so.
and there's some things that you can make mandatory and then not mandatory, but good information to have, because we're gonna keep doing this every year. So we needed not just to count where are they from, how long they're doing, I mean, some of that information counts, and so when we send them somewhere, we surprise what people fill out. They're like, hey, actually, I'm from Germany and I'm here for a week and I stayed in so and so. But the more detail we can get, if we wanted to make a different investment next year, we have that information, but we gotta have the information because we do it for every event we fund, everything. I'm seeing this as another event, it's a big event. So whenever we go after, you're requesting funding, we're going after something, it has to be just our demands are gonna be the same as any other event. Right now, the board has greatness and the city has greatness because there's so many people, this is the biggest event in our state, period, for the year. So of course, we all want to be interested in the event for it, but we also wanna have metrics on how'd it go? And then what would we do differently next year? So it's on us this year, whatever meetings we have for this event going forward, what should be talked about is how do we count? And what do we put on those flyers that are dropping so people will sign up and tell us what they, where they're from, where they're going, whether they'll visit Las Vegas or not.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question, Chuck, and you and Montana were there last year. What other cities were being represented there?
I saw Albuquerque, Silver City was there. I didn't see
Santa
Santa
Fe,
Fe.
was that there? I think they were
They
there.
were there, but I didn't see them.
That's it. So literally, we've got a good opportunity as a community to really get our name out there. You know, we don't have, 100 of them, we're one of 4, maybe 5. I think this is a great opportunity.
Absolutely, the numbers are there.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out what, the count.
And then, what I was gonna follow up with, some of these companies make tents for communities and companies, et cetera, whatever. Do we need to spruce up our tent to stand out? Or does our tent look like the rest of them? Is there anything we can do to spruce it up? Because it's all about what you see.
Right.
And if so, we may need to invest in something. We're gonna do this all the time, We probably need to make sure that we have the best,
Well, they provide the canopy and we can decorate it how.
any way we want, okay.
Last year we had a monitor and with a laptop and that worked out really well.
And you're planning that for this year?
People actually got to see Las Vegas, so that helped.
I think we need to invest in making sure that we look the best, and if we're one of 4, compared to 100 municipalities are in this state, we're in a pretty good little crowd. We're not gonna compete against Exxon or anybody like that, okay, or Creamland. I think it's pretty neat that we have a shot as a community trying to represent ourselves.
Right, and if we come up with something creative and it's well worth it. So
Yeah.
we've got the views, but if we need to figure out how do we maximize that to make sure they're looking at the Las Vegas booth and not the Creamland booth. Somehow you figure out, but if you get the message right, you get something special on there, you draw that. That's the idea. We're moving to where the people are, right? Where the eyeballs are at. But it's gonna be our duty to figure out, hey, how do we get them pointed towards us this way and they'll come over here? How do we drag them out of there? And that's also some of the key points. We've just started, but moving forward, the campaign should be, okay, the next time around, will you guys stop through Las Vegas? Or can we have an event right before the event or after the event to drag all these visitors from all over the world, maybe 2 hours now, south. I was surprised because this solar event and so on, we've already have a group booking one of the hotels and they're staying here and they're busing into Albuquerque every day. It would be good that if I can present them with, hey, there's stuff here, do this all the time. Do this tour group all the time because you have stuff to see. It won't just be busing back and forth from Balloon Fiesta. It's checking out our area.
Well, interestingly, I had 2 buses, tour buses, and they were
looking for somewhere else to go, so they picked up literature from Vegas, and that in the afternoons they were driving them over here. So that in itself was worth it.
There's an opportunity there for us. If we grow that enough, look, you're spending, what is it, $7,000 for 9 days of hotel. There's an opportunity there for cost effectiveness for tour groups to stay out here, check out things, and move into and drive into Albuquerque.
People were excited to see us,
Right.
that's for sure.
In October, I mean, those times, those areas, the shoulder seasons where we're slower outside of the summer, that's a benefit to the community. We've got the rooms to give them. These are time periods that we can grow. So again, it's gonna be important just from the mix of what I'm seeing here, for us to be able to count. So I don't wanna be repetitive, but
We'll come up with something.
any other discussion?
What kind of literature are you putting in there to hand out for people?
So we get a lot of the literature from the visitor center for the businesses that are there, and a lot of the lodging, tour guides. Pamphlets that we give out on the visitor center.
Okay, so if I walk over to the visitor center,
What you see
you're
there,
gonna,
you should see.
you're gonna take a sample of all of that stuff over there? Okay.
Chairman, Bakta and members, if there's any questions I can ask, because Chuck and myself and other city staff went to last year's event. Given none of our staff had been to this event, so we didn't know really what to expect, how we could decorate our booth. Now we've experienced it for 1 year, we've seen what other booths have had, what works, what doesn't work, how we entice or engage in conversation about City of Las Vegas instead of just handing off a water bottle. Let's engage in some kind of conversation. What are you interested? Where are you from? Get some demographics from them, where they're from, and then get them to come to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
As Chuck mentioned, there was numerous bus tour vendors that stopped by our booth and they said, wow, we didn't know Las Vegas was so close to Albuquerque. We're always looking for a day trip to take our members while there's some quiet time throughout the day, right? So, and we did see some come through the city. Based on our engagement there at the event. Going back to your question earlier about why didn't we do the sky tracks, which were the skydivers last year? Somebody scooped that up way early in the year, and so in communication with Miss Pendergrast at the Balloon Fiesta, I said, "What's the best bang for the buck? Where are we going to get the best exposure in tourism for our tourism-based clientele?" And she gave us a couple options, and she said, this one really stands out. It happens 4 times throughout the week. One of the days is going to be on the solar eclipse, so there's going to be a huge crowd at that event. Every event that takes place during the Balloon Fiesta is televised on their network, and it's broadcast within their website. So we don't have to pay to Channel 7 or anybody else. I mean, obviously they have coverage there as well, but they cover every event. And so we can always blast that onto our website, on our social media. There's ways to tie all those things together. So now that we've seen last year and what was needed, what we were lacking, we can kind of clean it up for this year. Given this year we're spending like $10,000 less on sponsorship. I think the only thing we didn't get with this year was some banners. We had 8 banners in last year's event. So we're still gonna try to get some banners on the property, throughout the property. But other than that, we're pretty much the same thing. The only other thing that we got this year and didn't get last year is the insert into the RVers welcome packet. So there's RVers, which we want to come to Las Vegas, the balloonists, and what was the other?
Pilots and navigators.
Pilots and navigators. So last year it went more to visitors. So
Is there a way, and we have that discussion on the agenda, but how far, is there something that if we're engaged with Sunny 505 that they can help us?
that's what I was gonna say. We are.
Everything from the booth to what message, how to count, I mean, that's what
We're gonna be working with 7505 and Ms. Griffin to create that QR code. We want high level demographics, email, where you're from, so we can always send out newsletters of events that are taking place in the city of Las Vegas. Also, 7505 will help us maybe redesign that rack card a little bit more and freshen it up. It was a rack card that was created with Lodgers Tax about 2 years ago with Las Vegas First. We kind of going to a smaller size of document versus the old style of a big, large booklet. So we will work with 7505 to create that document.
Yeah, maybe they could come up with a concept, I mean, and I'm sure they've worked with other municipalities even for the balloon fiesta, so they might have some ideas. But if you could, if they presented to me, as far as deliverables and stuff is, how do we, if we come up with a campaign, how do we count whether there was successful or not within the fiesta? We know that there's many people who are there, but is there a way in everything that we do to count? And look, it doesn't happen right away, but that's what we said last year, is that, look, next year we'll try to do these things, and we're at least going last year, we're at least being able to have the discussion this year. So as far as the tour guides and so on, what we want to be ready with is, okay, man, we know that there's tour guides that are coming from in there. What do we present to them to make it for them to make the push of going up to their bosses? Because I mean, that's what they're for. It's like, look, you know what? This needs to be on the itinerary. Let's change our route, or let's add this tour. But what do we present to them while we're there, while they're in front? Yeah, we could have the conversation, but if we have information on our town to present to them and make it appealing, then that's the higher chance that the tour group's going to book stuff like that. But we've got to be ready while we're there. It's not just us showing up. And I'm not saying we're not, but we learned some of the first things from last year, and this year could be, okay, what are the different things we can do to keep collecting that information and keep expanding that network, because so many people are there.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Roll call?
Matt Martinez,
Yes.
Helen Strader,
Yes.
Ruchik Bukta,
Yes.
Georgina Ortega Angel.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then I mean, that would be, we didn't do a caveat, but again, just as most, and when for council, it's the same message. This is our recommendation that, yes, these are there, but we have to have the systems and metric in place. If Sunny can help us out, okay, with the message, but we will have numbers to say, hey, this many people were able to see it. And we shouldn't be afraid of those numbers. We should be afraid if we're not counting.
Yes.
So, right?
We could definitely find something, and we'll get after it.
We'll
Alright,
engage
makes sense.
with them right after this, and we'll keep you in the loop as to that conversation.
Good deal. Good deal.
And Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
I think I've got a wheel I can lend you.
There you go. A wheel that counts. Alright. Let's see, so moving on, so we've got some discussion items. I want to kind of put a few of these in here, just we're aware of some of these things, or it's just kind of repeating because it's been a little bit. So the first discussion was the deadline for October 31st for largest tax marketing funding. I believe this is the deadline we had set in the prior meeting, so we were doing twice a year. So it's just a refresher for anybody that's asking for the public for request for event marketing and so on. The deadline is October 31st, and I'm hoping the proper messaging is going out, or if wherever it needs to go, we repeat.
So it hasn't gone out yet, but it will go out sometime by the end of this month. They had to make a PSA for it, and then
is there-
publication, send it out to the optic radio stations. We have to send it all out, so we have to create it first. Usually we start the end of August, early September, and so we have that whole time to get it in, the whole 2 months to get
Okay.
in the marketing applications.
I think we made it clear in the prior times that, look, the application is for 2 times a year, but they can, for whatever they're marketing, if it's something that's in January, they can still apply for that funding and prep for that funding for the October deadline. Those deadlines just mean that these are the 2 times we're looking for funding, application requests for the year. So I know there's been questions out here of when, and I want to clear them up because I know they've called me. So if somebody, just to make it clear, if somebody applies in October, and their event is in February or so on, they can still apply. So I just want to make that clear. You may have those questions going forward, Lucas, but we've tried to make that. Maybe it wasn't clear enough during the meeting, so I want to clarify because there was some confusion of when that funding would apply. And if there is any way staff-wise that you guys see that we need to clarify, or there's issues that we need to clarify, let us know. I see it the other way, staff approaching us saying, you know what, board, these dates would probably be better, and this way of doing things better. Some of the things that the board is enacting is things that were done years ago by the staff itself. But the main gist of it is having 2 solid deadlines during the year for event funding, and it's consistent every year on those dates and how we do it.
Okay.
Right?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
last year we went through the process of listening to a lot of presentations. And we had sort of earmarked some dollars, and then all of a sudden there was a issue with that individual organization or whoever was presenting to us. So maybe what we need to do on the paperwork going forward is, number one, they need a city license, I think, right, to do this.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And then they also hopefully are a 501c3, or that's what, we are looking for, or whatever we're looking for. And that we're getting all these things ahead of time and not asking for them to bring it back. So there's like a checklist before we even land up getting the whole application. You know what I mean, Montana, because we.
No, there hasn't been a checklist, but we can always create one.
Because
Give
that
it
way,
out with the-
that way it's that way you either qualify or you don't, and if we need to, well, let's change something to make everybody at least have a shot at it, but when you don't have something like that, we land up being the decision makers, and we're the ones that look like, oh, we turned you
It
down
might
because
seem
of X.
unfair, yeah.
And I think they need to know ahead of time what the parameters are.
Well, like the examples are, so we don't wanna, it might be a good event, but, they may have not filled out the application properly, or there's vagueness on what their entity is. So all of this needs to be vetted before there's disappointment, before it comes to us and we have to vet it. So those are basic things that when we receive the application, it's vetted first, and you could tell us, look, I had to put these out but they're not in front of you for these reasons, we'll work on it. Or they can work on it, get those fixed, and then they're presented to us. But yes, there needs to be, and it's been done so in the past where the staff has taken these applications, they see the glaring stuff, they didn't provide the detail on their budget. Their budget has things that lodger's tax doesn't entail, right? Those things need to be marked off ahead of time before it comes to us, so we don't have to, we're not grinding down into those kind of things during our meeting. We have many conversations, but it tends to turn into that situation. We'd rather be working on the event, have those, and talk about how best to do the event and then fund it versus the nitty-gritty of how it works with the city. How is it gonna work with procurement? Is this the way to go? Is this profit, non-profit? Those answers need to be settled before it approves to the board. And if we were to recommend it to council, it's the same thing. The board, the lodger's tax board, the resi board, our recommendation is that filter. It's what I always say, council has a lot on their plate. The whole point of this portion for funding is for this board to be accountable and present the council with a clean message of, okay, this is what you're presenting with, make a clean decision. But if we're sending them a bunch of questions along with as well, then I don't know, the board's unable to do their job. So hopefully for those packets, for those going forward, and we can sit down, we can look at other municipalities and so on, but some of these things, they're similar to other processes that we have in the city. So if the procurement's the same way, if that applies the same way, then so be it. If we need to change the form and put it on the form, let's do it. As long as it's consistent and people see it, then that's well-functioning city. All right, any other discussion on this item? I just wanted to repeat that so everybody knows. If any questions, this is coming up again. This is our, again, appeal push as a board to reestablish solid deadlines for marketing in the city, okay?
Mr. Vakta, just for the record, the two dates are, the first date is, for the application deadline is,
So
Should be March 30th.
the,
Last of March
it was
or
the,
April 1st or something.
yeah, it was the end of March or beginning of April 1st, and then the end of October, okay?
And you still get
So-
applications within if depending
So
on
what
what
we
it
can-
is, maybe two.
What we can do to make it clear, I think we were trying to go around, but we should still be able to work it out, like when the council meeting is, and that's the timing we were doing, is that if we approve, this is the time period, so that we don't want it to be a huge time period where we approve and then the entities are still waiting for their money and their events have gone by. So I think you know, if you gotta review the minutes for that time period, but we were taking into account what council needs to do and giving them enough time to approve or disapprove going forward. But keeping it static is definitely gonna help if we need to keep it on, if we're firm, and that's sort of the thing, if we can keep this consistent, we can put it on the forums, it's basically like clockwork every year, at least it should be, okay, end of March, end of October, if that's what we can consistently do all the time, there shouldn't be anybody in the community wondering. And I think in other places, like I think Santa Fe's just had it well established for a long time, everybody knows at this time period they're working on it. So that way groups can be working on it months and ahead, and that was part of our discussion too, is that we had too many events where it was reactionary, people were putting their applications in, it was the day before, during the day, and the thought process was happening during that week instead of planning for, anticipating, presenting to get funding. So for our side, we've gotta get these dates established and stick with them.
and really the reason I was asking is because if you have yours the last day of March, then you would have to have a lodgers tax meeting really quick for us to advertise for the second meeting in April for council to be able to view that item. So it kind of has to happen really quick versus a week or two earlier, then you have enough time to review the applications, answer some questions of the applicants, and then put the agenda together for the lodgers tax board with enough time to post it for a council meeting.
Right, so it's possible if more vetting is done before it goes. It may be possible to have the presentations and if enough vetting is done, I'm not saying, it may be possible to do the presentation and the approval within the same meetings if we do enough of the homework ahead of time. If we don't, we've always called a special meeting after that so we can have approval in time for, that's what's happened. Okay, so I think we could recheck, because if we did the end of March, yeah, it was cutting it tight. So we'd have to say earlier for that if we wanted to do that in the way. So that's something that we need to figure out what's possible here. If we are able to vet these things really well, then that one meeting will do it. If not, then we have to have 2 consecutive meetings, but that means that and we do actually, so we have our quarterlies in between, but the scenario in the past has always been, we take the presentation, then we do a special meeting for it.
Meeting is when they did the presentations and they had called a special meeting to do the approvals, which was right after it, like 2 weeks after.
Because the approvals aren't happening on the same meeting, correct?
As the presentation, no.
Right, so then you would never make it for the next month's council meeting. You would skip a whole month before council would review those
That's too late.
applications.
Yep.
Unless you had the deadline end in the middle of the previous month, then you had enough time to have 2 meetings and we can still post it for
So
the
you-
second meeting.
So so say for example this October 31st. Because I know we had this discussion, so on the first is the refresh, so we did do the end of March for the
So this year, what happened was because it was kind of late, we had a deadline, I think it was either the 7th or the 10th.
Okay.
We had that deadline set. We had the deadline and then we called a special meeting for the presentations and then your April regular meeting was the approvals. And then they got sent to
That's right.
council April 19th, I believe it was. They got sent to city council and then that's when council should have approved them.
Okay, so that
So this
that
year
sequence
was-
of events
That, yeah,
worked.
this one, what happened this year was just because it was kind of late and it was kind of like restarting it all over again, because that's when you mean not being there and then being there. So we did that one. I think that was kind of what we were gonna keep going. And then the October 31st meeting was because you guys have a regular meeting the 10th of October this year.
Right,
So
that was
that
probably the time to
meeting,
get the.
yeah, it was, we're trying to
presentations.
get them in and see which ones have come in. Because we do have a lot of like stragglers. Giving them that extra couple weeks to get applications in so that we have enough, like we did this last one, we had 13 or 15. Getting them in and then having it so that come December, if they're having an event, we would have to call a special meeting if we get enough applications. Then we would be able to call a special meeting if you guys need to approve them. If we don't have them, then we can do it that October one. And then we could get them into city council usually for the second council meeting usually, if we do it right. So October 31st will be your deadline. I think it's on Friday or Saturday. Have that deadline, we can review them, see which ones are gonna go. Call a special meeting, once those applications come in. We can get it in for November, for city council second meeting November. So come December, they already have everything. We should have contracts made between the entities and the city. We should have all that by December. So if they have their event in January, they already had everything approved before then. So if you guys need to change the October one, we can even put it to, we could do it to September 30th. So that your October regular meeting, you guys can have your applications in hand and have
Cause
them
it's
there.
second Tuesday in October that we have
Second Tuesday in
already.
October is when your regular meeting is.
And so so if we were setting it up similarly to the time period in the spring, it would still work like that. The
Yeah, so it'd be the
deadline was
same
our
way we
quarterly
did in
meeting.
March. Yeah, it would be
Right,
the
and
same
then we were
thing.
able to set it, so it should, for the second thing, yeah, ideally, it would be, the deadline should be our quarterly meeting, and then we would call a special meeting to approve.
And
That's
we could do
ideally
that,
what
we
you-
could put it, the deadline would be the second Tuesday of your last quarterly one,
Right
so
at the
that
quarterly,
you can call a special meeting just for the approvals. And you already had everything weeded out by the presentations.
okay?
Mr. Chair, the bulk of the applications come in the spring, right? March.
Most of them are in the spring, there's very, very, very few that would come in on the
I mean,
winter months.
To me, it's a symptom of the problems of whatever we can do best to work with council and get the diet right in, and I think it should coincide with our quarterly meetings that are supposed to happen anyways. So that way we're not are not having to call so many meetings, and if it works along with council. So if we could get it down, I mean, if March went that way, I think we should do October the same way, but if we're too late into it as far as the deadline to work the same way, so then what would be our deadline for applications to make the quarterly meeting?
So if you wanna do it, your deadline for applications, you would have to start marketing for them ASAP. Work on a publication, get it out to, the update, get it out to the website, everyone that we can now by the end of this week, and you would still have the entire month of September. You'll still have a couple weeks in August to be marketing that. And you could even put it, like you said, I wouldn't put it on the 10th because that's actually your meeting and we have to have everything in usually by that Friday before. So that you guys get your packets in time, so it's not getting your packet
And
like the
enough time
same day,
to-
yeah,
And
getting
enough
it
time
the
to
same day of
vet
the
the
meeting.
packet before the presentation.
Yeah, so this one,
So you're changing the date now, or are you still sticking with the October 31st?
If we stick with October 31st, then we would be further into the session, but then we'd be calling two special meetings.
So if you have, this is the 31st, right? So you would virtually have to have your first lodger's tax meeting the next day, which doesn't give us enough time to vet those applications.
Nope.
And then you would have to have the approvals on the next Wednesday for us to advertise to be posted for the second meeting on Wednesday, the second meeting of the month, which doesn't give us enough time.
No.
So it would be till December, so anybody that wanted to have an event for that Christmas time period.
It'd be
there's no
harder.
reason to advertise it.
So we need to have it going, but
Is
Can
this
we-
set, is this date, I'm sorry, excuse me, is this day set by motion?
Yes.
It is set by motion.
and we set
It
the,
was, yes. This last one, I believe in February. It was either February or January, I think January actually.
Can we
that
look
was
at
released.
those? I honestly, I can't,
If I'm
remember
not
what
mistaken, it was in
meeting
January
changed.
for the regular meeting that they set the thing. So if you wanna change them, the only thing is you won't be able to change it here because it's only for discussion. In order to change the deadline that you guys set, you guys would have to call a meeting for the approval of changing that October 31st deadline date.
okay. Let's see what we originally set, and I'm trying to remember, but the discussion we did have is this same discussion we're having now, is that how does it work for then the follow-up to approval by council? And I thought we were getting the timing right, and so we're sure it wasn't October 10th that if we originally had the same conversation?
We might have to look at the
Look at
minutes.
the
I could have
minutes
sworn
and
it was the
see.
31st, but we could just double check to
Yeah,
make sure it
I'll have
wasn't the
to
10th.
Go back and review. If it is, then it works easier for us, but I know we had the discussion at that time to make sure we had things
And I
in.
believe we
in time
approved
with
it because
council.
it was the first approval one, so it should have been.
Right.
But
But if not, we're gonna have to get working to change it because I don't think the 31st would be viable then if with the council's approval, we get way too late into the season. So we probably need to move on it as quick as we can.
So tell me the thought process of the applications that were due October 31st were designed for projects before Christmas or projects into the spring?
Into both, because by the time you enter the next season, the way I saw it is they're just windows for the application. To me, they should be open within the year of when they could apply that, so they're not caught in the trap of, well, this was the deadline for this time period, this was the deadline for this time period. This is just the opening window for the year.
And the reason I ask that is if it gets approved through lodger's tax, it gets approved through council, you wouldn't have that approval till the middle of November, which whoever the applicant is wouldn't have enough time to really
do
target an
stuff.
audience to advertise for a Christmas event.
No. So some of the things that within these time periods, some of the thought process for a vet that's caught in the thing, as long as we stay consistent. So we've got these difficulties now, but you time it within the first window of, look, we're gonna start marketing within this window. But I agree that getting into the end of October, now we need to go back to the discussion we had, it's getting late for the second time period. I agree, the 31st looks like it, but that's why I wanna go back and review our discussion. But I know we had the conversation of how this would work with council and approving and so on for this session. And if it doesn't work with the quarterly meeting, that's fine, then it needs to be pushed to a date, as long as we establish those dates and what's best for the community and stay consistent with it.
Mr. Chair, I guess in my mind, you need to work from the council meeting backwards, okay? And, we might be using up a lot of oxygen here thinking about a date, which is driving me crazy already up here. I really believe that if we're making all this noise and we're only gonna get 3 applications or 2 or something, it's just, what are we doing here? I think what we need to do is figure out the right time. If we have to call a special meeting just to change the dates, that's not a problem.
Right.
We need to take your lead, tell us, okay, we need to get this thing ready for the October meeting of the city council. A month, so many days before that, you need to have approved it, and so many days before that, you need to have edited it, and that way we work from the council meeting back. That's the easiest way, and really, we can jump up and down all we want here and say all kinds of stuff, but we need your recommendation to let us know what will work best. How many applications, Montana, are we talking about that happened at this opening?
So in the deadline that we had this spring, there was, I wanna say 15 that we
And now?
got.
And for this one?
We haven't had any because we haven't marketed yet
But
for
have
it.
we ever done it before?
We did a little bit. We did it, what was it, before the year before Amy came in. And I think we had probably like 5.
So we just need to we need you guys to recommend to us what's the best thing. start from the council meeting that we want it approved back so that there's enough time to do the event in November and December, January, February, and hopefully March if that's the case. And then we start the next process, because the bulk of this is the springtime, right? The March one. So let's just get the dates and go with you guys' recommendation, because you guys are the ones that are working on it, vetting it, have all this stuff. I recommend they go that route, Mr. Chair.
I mean, I agree. I'd rather it be, because I'm not in their shoes on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure, so I agree. It should be coming from the staff level, because on a day-to-day basis, you guys, whether it's Logitech or other, working on these things, in my mind, is not on those dates, but your guys' are. So government is you, we're that advisory board. If you have solid dates that works, all I'm saying as far as advisory is we be consistent so that we can advise the community. Sometimes you get lack of applications because people give up or they're frustrated that they don't know when to apply or so on. So if we're solid on our end, this is the days you apply, this is when you'll get funding, and so on, then we can entice more and more people to apply and have projects. But if it's better on, I will surely, let the city take the lead on when that's the case. I just know we've been struggling for some time, but if the best dates are there, this is what's recommended to us. I don't see why we couldn't recommend that to council. And if it even needs to be recommended in that way, it could be established to me, and then this was in the past, it could be established at the staff city level. These are the set deadlines. All I'm recommending to me with the board representative that they be consistent every year, so we could just basically put it on the form and it's kind of burned in.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just hoping to hear from you guys that you want a special meeting to change the dates.
We could, because it's been a while that I've been out of Lodger, so my memory is kind of everywhere. The October 31st meeting, though, I could tell you, I do remember, it was set for January, because that's when we had some people coming in that they wanted funding. I want to say it was for one of the booklets. They wanted it by January so they could start doing it by April, by the spring. That's why we put it, it was so that October meeting was to get January. We were hoping to get from January to, I think, June of the following year. And then that spring one, we were trying to get from the rest of the fall and winter months. That's why it was set the way it was. It wasn't to call a special meeting after special meeting. It was to get for your January.
To address
regular
that
meeting.
gap.
It was for
If
that
we
gap
put
to
it at-
get the early winter or late winter,
If
early
we put
spring
it ahead of time,
in October.
in
That's what it was
October, then
for.
they could still, that's the time where they would apply for January.
Yeah.
I
October
still
was
think
only
that's-
for like January, February, March
Right.
to come in so that your January meeting, you guys had your applications for presentation or whatever it would have been. You guys would have had those in time.
So I guess going back to Mr. Chair, going back to the city manager's thought of November, December, there's not enough time.
Yeah, but that's what's, because I couldn't remember, but now thinking it was October 31st was in to have a council in November, December. Those ones we were hoping by the, April meeting, we had like August, September, October, November, December in that one, because it was so many months before, so they could start doing it early on. So the October one was for the following year. So like this October would be for January, February, March, April 2024 marketing. That's what this October one would have been for. It was for next year, January, February, March, and April. And then come April, it would have been for
May all the way to
May
December.
all the way to hopefully for December. I mean, we have some of those that we can. Like I know that there's been like periodically like somebody will randomly comes and be like, oh, I have an application. And you can always look at those and let the board knows, and if that's something that, you could call a special meeting because it's something that could be good. We could always do that, like if it has to, but
We
it
also were
was
gonna-
always to do the 6 months prior to.
Right. We were also gonna try at least establish the 2 times a year and
Yeah,
then
for the big
see,
events.
yeah, and then see whether a third would be needed or not. So
Yeah,
instead
that's
of
what the 2 dates were for. It took me a while to recap everything.
Mr. Chairman, that's when I was running the board, you had suggested that way earlier.
We've been trying it, yeah, for a while now. We just, for one thing or another, or whether it's COVID or whatever, we've just been trying to establish it for a long time, but
I think
we
those,
could,
I think those two dates are too far forward. They both need to be either moved back, so the first one should take place like at the end of December, asking for the spring and summer events. And then like July would be through the fall and winter events. You know what I mean? Because it's hard for a lot of nonprofits to say, okay, I wanna have something in December and have that thought process in February or March.
yeah, and then I think when we had that discussion, because we were thinking of the midpoints, but July, for various factors, including largest tax, whether between budget approvals, between that whole season around that time period, I'm trying to
Even
think back if we've
mid-August.
done it before.
Mid-August would be
Yeah,
good, cause our
probably
our
after-
budget's approved by then.
Yeah, and if they're all approved, then that could be a good time period for it. Again, I mean, for that period, it's a special meeting probably if we wanna take a look at those before our October meeting and so on. But so much stuff happens in the, as you know, for the meeting during the summer, that it's a lot to pack in. I know we had issues in the past. I'm not gonna say we didn't, but I think we were trying to do multiple things way back in the past as far as approving the budget, trying to get these apps in and so on.
So take like the Balloon Fiesta, for instance, right? That happens in October. And
Yep.
then it'd be difficult for us to start that process in February,
Well, as much
March.
as you know what, if we got it in March, I think we would have had a good shot at that, if whoever signed up for that deal so
I
early.
just don't know when we broadcast what's available.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if
but
that-
if we start thinking that far ahead, and obviously that, whatever city that grabbed that spot, did, somebody was thinking about it that far ahead, for it, and we've got to do it. If it's, there's not gonna be, perfect timing, so I think it'll be easier to revolve it around at least quarterly meetings that we already have. So if we could stick to that, I agree. I think this 31st is probably too late going into this season. If we could make it work out of 2 of the quarterly meetings and make it work around there where we have 2 quarterly meetings and have a special meeting and get in time for council. If we can make that work, that seems to be our strongest point. We could go into the scenarios of twice a year, but in the middle of the summer to August is we run into some stuff. And either way, let's see, if you get into January, you could advertise for everything through the summer. And then August, you're going through the fall. Again, I mean, it also, as far as the board, and then I mean, I guess as far as the rest of them, if everybody's ready, you know, I think that's right, that, look, we'll call the meetings, we'll do what we need to do, but what's the most efficient for it? And some of it should, to me, revolve around the quarterly meetings that we already have, so that we're not calling multiple special meetings.
So if you would allow us to do a little bit of research, see what, if it was by motion.
Yeah,
that those
take a
dates
look
were
at what we
set,
did.
And if they were, we can present, maybe we can start advertising right away and maybe have the applications due by the end of September. And then have a special meeting, and then from there, we realign all the dates.
I would really try to get this, and there's only so much, we keep having this discussion, I guess, within the meeting. But if you have the discussion with staff or so on, and really sit down and look at the dates, as long as we set it, and so we're not having to look at this scenario. Cause we're looking at these scenarios, you know, every 3 months or 6 months down the road, we're revisiting what we did for time period, and here we are, trying to figure out what we're trying to establish. So whatever we do, let's think it out clearly. And yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be in discussion, but if we need to change it and it's well thought out, let's do it and stick with it. But ideally, you know, I think it's easier to do when, I mean, everybody knows that every quarter, there's a largest tax meeting on the second Tuesday of every quarter. That's consistent. Just like council meetings, that's consistent. So if we could establish that framework of, okay, this is the quarterly, so when people think of it, okay, this is the deadline for so-and-so. And I think that would make it the easiest. For stuff that's caught in the gaps, people have to think earlier, but I think that will they'll benefit us. For them to think about it earlier, it'll go forward. And then the balloon fiesta stuff, though, to me, those are special items that the city should be encompassed in the marketing as a whole, the entire marketing, right? Versus just any one event. So if we have bigger funding, then that's fine. But again, those are things that we could address. Hopefully, start addressing during the quarterly meeting, so we don't have to call special meetings for approval. Right, so when we have those meetings or they actually occur, that's the time to bring them up. So when next year, I ideally would like to be starting talking about balloon fiesta in the spring, and we might hit some of these things a lot earlier and capture some of these things. I know it happens in other towns. I mean, we got it for this one. That's fine. Next year we'll start earlier and execute. But that's that many months where we could come up with creative. That Sunny could come up with creative for October. We've been working on a campaign for months by that point versus trying to be under the gun. So I think we've repeated in the past is that if we established a system that's for the people that work on a schedule, that this is to their benefit. They think ahead, that's to their benefit. And you're pushing other people and there's always going to be that hey, our event is that time. What happened? We're pushing those guys to think further ahead, but it'll only work if we stay consistent. So whatever we do, let's try to stick
Mr.
with
Chair, I
it.
guess I'm more concerned is do we have the staff to handle all the stuff that we want done, so.
Yeah,
That's probably in the back of my mind, we had a special council meeting with the council and we talked about it, and one of the big concerns that I heard from them was, make sure that we had enough staff to take care of all the things we needed done in this department. And I don't know, I just think at some point we need to go off of your lead and you need to tell us what we need to do moving forward.
well, look,
In my mind, the lodging tax has one major role. It's how do we disperse the lodging tax dollars? So we can have as many quarterly meetings and stay on a set agenda forever. We had 2 meetings in April, okay? I've been here now 1 year. I know I've met more than 4 times in the last year. So when it comes to the funding, we'll just make sure that we take care of those things that need to be done and make sure that we get everybody in the deadlines that we have. This is not too complicated to me. I really hope, number one, that you have the staff to take care of it. Number two, that we follow some kind of a process and that just move on our merry way so that we won't waste a lot of time. That's why I look at it. I'm a businessman. Time is money.
right. Well, look, and so I mean, you said money. We have funds right now. So in the past, and we currently are doing. I mean, if it came down to, and maybe it's not down to funding, but for personnel, I mean, we recruited from Highlands, whether it's a graduate student or so on, working with Highlands to help with staff, and Lodgers Tax paid for it. At least help paid for it for when it comes, and those are future staff. They could end up being your the help with. I mean, the idea is grabbing some of these young individuals that are the masters and they're already in marketing and so on, anyways, to come hit the city, help the city. So we've got the funds. Yes, maybe in the past we just didn't have that kind of Lodgers Tax money to give, but we do. So if we need someone and that has that background, we should recruit from Highlands and let's pay them to do all things. There needs to be a person that is working on this all the time, that's coordinating with Sunny 505 all the time. That's their day job while everybody's working on this on their own. That is very clear. The only time the last time that this has worked is that there's an individual working on the marketing for the city, whether it was working with a marketing company or so on. There needs to be that. There's only so much stuff that you're gonna do. There's so much more that encompasses community development. There's so much more that of course, that's where I see that it's difficult, because in the past there was always someone that I could go to, or I did an administrator, but it's not fair if that person's getting pushed around because we don't have that consistency in motion. We'll set a date, but then maybe somebody else is here. So we need to have that individual. We have the funding. If we could figure out how to get some of that in here homegrown, it could be from Highlands, it could be from Luna, it could be from thing that's here, then that's gonna be to our benefit. Some of this stuff, yeah, it could be simpler. we've just made it complicated because we've lost a lot of the processes along the way. And it's not a fault to any one person. I mean, you're right, we don't have the staffing to execute, we don't have some of these things to go on, but I'm going from what I have in the past. If we don't have candidates now, it's fine, but let's make sure that we're hitting all the things. If we can go to Highlands and request internships and so on, I don't think you have to look for too many sources in your budget. I think you could look at Lodgers Tax if they're gonna be doing all things Lodgers Tax. But somebody's gotta be there. And those are the guys that are helping you with dates and so on on a bit, but it's not just every quarter or every meeting. They're working on this stuff on a day-to-day basis. And they're communicating with the public too, that there's a person here that's communicating there while you guys are dealing with everything else. So really think about a person that works on marketing for the city every year that coordinates with 505.
Mr. Bakta, we have been discussing, we've had 2 or 3 different job descriptions that entail marketing, web design, different types of industries that are part of community development, and we're trying to put together a hybrid job description so we can fill that position. We're gonna try to focus on that now that we have Mr. Marquez in the position and fill that so that they have somebody that's can devote time to Lodgers Tax and devote their time to working with Sunny 505 in their marketing, so we are working on it.
Yeah, once you fill that this becomes a lot easier and some of the trivial stuff about dates and stuff, because that person is working on this every day and so on, are not dragged away to another project. But I'm glad, I hope we can, and hopefully it's something that I know we've done it in the past, that I mean, we've got universities in town. So hopefully it works hand in hand of, hey, because they're more likely to stay on, to stick with us, to stick with that. I mean, they've been part of the community and we want them to stay on, not fly away somewhere else. So that's the hope on it. Okay. Any other discussion on the dates? We'll get feedback and then we'll set up a special meeting if we need to change that date. If there's not, then we're moving to Sunny 505. I just put it on there because we had the Optic article on there about the city rebranding, and then I've been posed with a lot of questions on what we're doing with Sunny 505, and I guess the surprise too of rebranding and why we're rebranding again and so on. So I wanted to have that discussion so that if anybody else had it, I mean, but at least at the board level, we know that, hey, this is the direction we're going in.
Sure. So Chair, we've been working with Sunny 505 and Mrs. Griffin's group for about two and a half months now. Obviously, it's funded through Lodgers Tax. They've already gone ahead and worked on the city's tourism website, which is Visit Las Vegas page. That was also funded through some post-fire funds that the New Mexico Tourism Department offered to the city of Las Vegas. So they revamped, not to the finished product, but actually revamped it to be more functional. The tourism page, if anybody's visited that page, it's been changed over to this new setup, and they're continuously making it better with adding more data to it. They're also managing the co-op with New Mexico Tourism or New Mexico True program. So every time we have to do editorials or we have to do photo shoots or posting in magazines, they are the ones that are making the proofs instead of city staff having to do that. There's been numerous postings or publishments that have already gone through. I know that they're also working on some not impact groups. I can't remember they met about 2 weeks ago. They had 4 different groups that came in, and not impact. What were they called? Do you recall what those groups were called? Marketing policy groups or something like that, and they got input from community members. Everybody was open to advertise to community members, and they had 4 or 5 different meetings to get input. And I think it's no, that's not it. And so they're gonna meet periodically to continue that and see where we want to go with the city's marketing and the vision.
So it's really, and I mean, I was just wrapping my head, so it's really, I mean, it's really just doing the homework to come up with a marketing campaign for the town. So as far as rebranding goes, is one of the deliverables that we're coming up with another logo, and we're coming up with another tagline?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
part of it?
Yes, sir. One of those, the tagline was Old Trails Down New Adventures or something. That's pretty old now.
New Adventures on Old Trails?
There you go, that one. So just trying to see if we can freshen that up. You know, obviously the city of Las Vegas targets our historic history of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And trying to see if there's other industries that we can target out there.
There's a packet from the old one, from New Adventures on Old Trails. I mean, it's newer, but the biggest warning that they gave us, and I don't know if Sunny had brought that out, was yes, we can do the branding, but it won't go anywhere if we don't execute it and go on it full force. So New Adventures Down Old Trails essentially failed before it started, and what people just have a summary of it is a logo change, but there was quite a bit of knowledge that was gathered, the same things that are happening now, a considerable advancement where that company, and we were lucky to have them, but they gathered considerable amount of knowledge. Hopefully, I don't know, if we find it in a packet or so on, so it wasn't just like sales or logo item. There is considerable amount of information and people they interviewed and so on that we could hopefully hand to 505. But when we did that on the last run for that, we didn't execute on it right away. We hired the next year of having our rebranding. We hired Cisneros company to do a campaign, and they said, okay, we're not doing New Adventure, we're doing So Damn Authentic, we can prove it, was the thing that flew with on that next year. So immediately, yes, we revamped it, but we immediately threw it away within the next year. Now, the reason I'm saying this is that's why there's so many questions, is this isn't the first time the community's gone through rebranding. So we probably need to be really careful when we communicate this time around, is that what are we doing to do it differently? And so I'm just repeating again, whatever we do, we've gotta stick with it for the long haul, or the rebranding doesn't work, we're wasting a lot of effort. I get the campaign, but as far as rebranding and coming out with the logo and those things, if we're gonna invest the dollars, we better be invested in it for the long haul, or you're gonna have the community asking, what, we're rebranding again? But we just did, and it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
With Sunny 505, they've been meeting with the chamber and when we have our business meetings, and they're asking a lot of questions. They're developing gathering a lot of information to make the new branding.
Okay.
Part of that with Cisneros is that the city didn't write into the contract to retain any of the assets.
Yeah, it was a learning experience, right? Yeah, we number one made a decision to go with the marketing committee that didn't execute on the branding we just did the year before. They went in a different direction that didn't reinforce it, and then on the second year of that Cisneros contract, we didn't write any deliverables for it. So it was a learning thing, but we haven't had a company since then. That's what the unfortunate part is, that we haven't recovered even for that. We haven't had a marketing company promote our town professionally since then for it. So yeah, we've got learning on the deliverables. When we're talking about branding, just please reflect back to what's happened in the past, and let's make sure we don't make the same mistake. We approach Sunny 505, this is the deliverables, but what you're delivering to me, is this just year one, or what you're delivering to me, what the city can jump on for the next decade? Because we're not gonna be changing logos on trucks and all this other stuff if we're not gonna be serious about it. As of now, as far as city vehicles, I don't know if the logo is even on all the city vehicles. Some of them still have the seal, and some of them may have the.
No, they should all
They all
have
change?
this logo that's up there.
Yeah. So whichever they do, it's not just to do it, to rebrand it, because that's also been the motion in the past, is that, well, we need to come up with a brand, we need to rebrand. It's executing it for the long term. So whatever we do, it shouldn't be 6 years or 7 years down the road and we're saying, well, what, we're rebranding again, making another branding effort. So for the people that have been around, I mean, that's why they're asking why we're branding again. So hopefully that's part of their presentation of, hey, this is gonna be in a branding change, like Coca-Cola doesn't change their logo every year. We shouldn't be doing it every 5 years because we need to gather a campaign. Let's get that through. And if it's not possible, it's not for the long haul, we need to leave stuff alone. I'd rather focus on a broad campaign to encompass. We don't have to revolve around brand change, a branding. We can revolve around how do we gather information, market the city for what it is, instead of having to come up with a tagline or another logo or so on. I hope resources are just focused more on gathering information, marketing what we have. That's all on the thing, but if there's presentations or feedback that Sunny could do to Lodgers Board too on the funding, that if that's possible at some point. And
I'm sorry, say that again.
for Sunny 505 to approach the board so that we can confidently recommend, as of now, on the details of their lacking, so we just recommend, okay, let's fund Sunny 505. But as a board, as far as the details of what's happening and whatnot, and we might be it might be going over, but as far as a recommendation to the city, we're unaware of some of the specifics, so that makes it tough for approval, for funding and so on. So some of the substance or some of the feedback for back and forth of what should be happening with Sunify, I mean, some of that should be coming from Logitech, considering we're advising council to fund or not to fund.
We'll ask Ms. Griffin and Sunny 505 to present at the next council meeting, so you can get an update as to where they're at. That'll give us some more time
Yeah.
to
And
finish.
that way, some of these questions are answered directly from them, or they can think about it. And in our recommendation to council, if, I'm sure the council would have similar questions, but we would have answers for them as a Lodgers Tax Board. Any other discussion on 505?
Other than you make sure that our city lawyer has that on paper, that it's our property.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever we pay for, it's ours.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that last one was pretty expensive
Yeah, retaining the rights, that was
on everything. We pay
another
for it, we want the deliverables and they're ours.
We'll be looking for that.
contract. All right, that's what we have for the meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
All right, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, meeting adjourned.
We did 3 or 4 different videos.